Welcome to Pharmacy View, Technology and Pharmacy Business podcast series, where we provide regular interviews with pharmacists and key industry people within the Australian pharmacy and associated industry. In each podcast, we look to discuss aspects of pharmacy operation and how technology is improving or interacting with each guest's current role or pharmacy-related business. I'm your host, Scott Carpenter, and today's guest is sponsored by Shopfront Solutions, leading the way in digital marketing and communications, providing a cloud-based platform for pharmacies to manage all of their digital messaging and print-based collateral. For more information on the Shopfront Solutions digital platform, simply go to the website at shopfrontsolutions.com.au. I'm talking today with Guy Leech, who many of you may know as Ironman Champion Guy Leech, but also has a really interesting association today with the pharmacy industry. Welcome, Guy.
Hello, how are you?
Not too badly at all. Great to have you on board. So obviously you and I have worked together for some time now, so we know each other fairly well by now. But for those of you who may not know of your background, who is Guy Leech?
Well, mate, no one really knew me until 1984. I was a kid trying to go to the Olympic Games. I wanted to compete for Australia, represent Australia in swimming, and so I started that campaign probably at the age of 9, right through to I was 17 years of age, and for me the journey changed and shifted to wanting to do Ironman after watching a TV commercial with Grant Kenny, who was famous at the time back in the 80s as the Ironman champion, and he was on an ad on television promoting Kellogg's Nutri-Grain of all things, and the TV commercial, they did such a good job of it, I suppose, making Ironman sport look like a hero sport, that I went and joined the surf club the next weekend at Manly and wanted to be like Grant Kenny. So that sort of changed and shifted what I did. And a year and a half later, a movie that was touted as being the next big thing after Mad Max, a movie called The Coolangatta Gold, was about these two brothers that wanted to be the Ironman champion, and Grant Kenny played himself in this movie, and they needed an incredible finish to the movie for the script to like an unbelievable Ironman race, and they came up with this race, a real race from Surfers Paradise to Coolangatta and back, which was 46 kilometres, something that a normal Ironman race was a couple of kilometres as compared to 46k. So it was a massive change. They promoted the hell out of this thing. I turned up to the Gold Coast. They put $50,000 worth of money on it. First place was $20,000 worth of gold, and it took me 4 hours and 30 minutes to beat 100 of the best aquatic athletes that turned up from around the world. And mate, I was famous overnight, and a sport was born on that day. And mate, that was me. I was doing that for the next 15 years. So yeah, that's my story really. I did that for a long period of time, and I was one of those fortunate people that did the thing he loved the most, and did it for a living.
Yeah, and obviously I'm also aware that your roots are actually based in Melbourne, and you might have actually some very early AFL affiliation, but many other people who may not know your Ironman story might also know you from the Australian Survivor Series.
Yeah, it's funny, when you become known, you get rung up a lot by television. Well, the start of the reality TV programs on television were back in the 80s, I suppose, and Survivor was the first one. But it's funny, I've knocked back over the years every type of reality celebrity show you can imagine. So I've knocked back Dancing with the Stars, the ice skating one, the diving board one, the singing one, trying to think Big Brother celebrity version. I knocked all of them back, and then I got asked to do Survivor. And out of all the shows on television, our whole family loved that show the most, and we all would sit and watch it and get into the characters and all the rest of it that were competing in it. And so when I got asked to compete in a Celebrity Survivor, that was where I went, yep, I'm in. And so it's like 14 years ago now, I competed over in Vanuatu, and it was just like your normal Survivor where you starve and people get voted out and all those things. And yeah, I ended up, after a month of doing the Survivor thing, ended up being the last one standing. So it was a good experience.
From that as well. And obviously aware today that you're residing on the North Shore in Sydney, and that's had its challenges of late, but also doing sport and fitness, coaching and training around the place. And obviously today's a bit about the technology around defib. So how did that all come about? Where's the story there?
Yeah, well, defibrillators. I was only saying to a person on the phone just before that, unfortunately, people that get involved with defibs normally get involved in it through a tragedy, unfortunately, or escaping one. And for me, it was the first instance in that I was taking a fitness class that I've been doing down near Manly on the harbour there for the last 18 years, and it was just like any other morning where we went paddling and paddled into harbour beaches and did exercises on the beach and that sort of stuff. And at the back end of this session that we're doing with about 25 predominantly guys in the session, one of the boys who was one of my best mates said to the group to tell me that he was going to paddle back in earlier just before the end of the session because he wasn't feeling that good. So my mate Chucky paddled back in to Manly Harbour, just near where the ferries come in to Manly, and unfortunately dropped and had a cardiac arrest right near his car on the grass. And we paddled back in about 5 minutes later. I still remember now, I know the guy that said to me as we were paddling in, he said, "Is that someone up there doing resuscitation?" And I looked up and, it was sort of 300 metres away. And I said, yeah, geez, we better get up there and do something. And then one of the other boys said, "Is that Chucky?" And I said, no, it can't be Chucky. And that was the start of it. And it obviously was him. And I took over and performed CPR on him and did that until the ambos turned up. And he didn't make it. So, it was an absolute shock. It was something that, was still to this day, just a terrible feeling. But what I learned off the back of it was that had we had a defib there, he would have had a much, much better chance of surviving. And from that then, all the people there that watched that occur that day and all the other people in the paddling group that knew Chucky all wanted to know more. They wanted to learn CPR. They wanted to know more about defibs. They wanted to get checked up by cardiologists themselves on their heart, and that began my journey into defibs. So I got a defib. I investigated which ones were the best. The friends in the group all wanted defibs. So here we are now talking about it, and we're over 5 years past that day. So that's time goes on.
Yeah. On that note too, I think a good learning here. I've listened to you a couple of times when we've been in meetings or training sessions about that. You sent your crew off all to get health checks or heart checks, and that story I think is quite a valid one here for people to be aware of. Yeah,
look, there's a number of things that you can do to give yourself the best chance of not dying from a heart-related incident. Certainly, your lifestyle choices are at the forefront. There's no doubt. What you eat, exercise, reducing stress, not smoking, those sort of things. But, knowing what's going on inside your body is a massive part of, dodging a heart-related incident. And, the people in my group, as I said before, are predominantly males, middle-aged. There was about 100 guys that turned up every week at some sessions to go and train with me. And I said to those guys, look, we don't want to be doing this again. We want to make sure that we're on the front foot. So you've got 12 weeks to go to a doctor, get a referral, and go and see a cardiologist and get checked up, get your heart checked up. So we're talking 39-year-old being the youngest, 72-year-old being the oldest. And if you saw a picture of these guys, you would have thought, yeah, they're all fit-looking guys that have kept themselves in good nick. So off they went. Of those 100, 5 had to go straight into hospital to have stents put in, and another 10 had to go on medication because of issues to do with high blood pressure, cholesterol, those sort of things. And you literally would look at these people and go, mate, they are fit-looking individuals. The irony in the story was that the one that had 2 stents was the 39-year-old who you would say on paper was the fittest out of anyone in the group and trained the house down, had not an ounce of fat on him, and was the youngest in the group, and he had 2 stents put in. So you just don't know. You don't know what's going on inside your body unless you get it checked up.
Yeah, and as you highlighted there, it's not just necessarily everyday people. It's the fit and healthy. It's the young. It's the old.
It's everyone. It doesn't discriminate. And so your genetics and your family history and all those things come into it. And you sort of think, particularly males, that when you hit 50 and the government sends you testing to do and those sort of things, that now it's time to get everything checked up. But, like we're talking about, a kid under the age of 10 today dies of a electrical issue of the heart. Fit teenagers, 20-year-olds right up. So, it's one of those ones where age doesn't count as much. And, your heart, you need your heart to pump to stay alive. And, mate, it's pretty important. So, yeah, there's a real message in that.
From that. And obviously that leads into the development of the creation of your business, which we can talk about in a minute. But I guess what we really want to talk about today is the technology that sits around that. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the defib. Where's it come from? What's involved?
Yeah, so I learned all this, as we've gone on the last 5 years, and you would consider myself to be, I suppose, an expert now compared to most people on defib. So the original defib that was invented was one out of Seattle, and a company called Physio Control developed the first defib, which shocked someone's heart to restart the heart, essentially. And that was used based on a car battery, which generated, voltage through a big machine that did that. And so basically that was 70 years ago. And because of that business is still in Seattle. Their survival rates from a heart-related incident in the streets of Seattle out of hospital is the highest in the world, because people are trained up to do CPR. People are willing and able to go and help. And there's defibs, right around the community. So that was the start. And if you fast forward to today, then a defib's the size of a lunchbox, not a car that has leads that can go through a machine to bring someone back to life. And they weigh just over a kilogram. They can handle rain. They can handle up to 52 degrees Celsius heat. So, times have changed. And even in the last 5 years, to be fair, I've seen some quite dramatic changes in that time as well.
No, that's cool. And again, obviously from my perspective, this is a lot that I've learned as we've gone through this journey together in the last 12 to 15 months. The technology, I guess, that sits behind these machines today, and again, the fact that they're small, the fact that they're portable, how has that developed over time, or what's been involved with that, or what's sitting behind that?
Yeah, so the defibs have a capacitor that basically takes the battery's energy and stores it into a shock that gets delivered. And mate, it gets delivered in, so like 3,000 volt charge gets delivered into a body when you press the button, or the defib automatically shocks in 1,000th of a second. And that's enough electricity to light up like a 100-watt bulb for 23 seconds. So it delivers a decent whack, a decent shock to change the patterns of the body to get the heart restarted. They're very effective, and I say that because statistics show that if you've got an electrical issue with your heart and you need a shock to get it restarted, then, with getting a defib on someone in that first 180 seconds and performing adequate CPR that the defib tells you to do, and letting the defib shock you, the person's got about a 70% chance of surviving. With good CPR, and in that same time slot of getting the defib on someone, up to 90% chance. So, with me doing it, that means, knowing what I'm doing, we're talking about, up to 90% chance of surviving. Now, the one that'll shock everyone listening, the stat is that, and this is no reflection on ambulance people at all, it's about time. So if you ring 000 around a CBD area, and it's worse out in the country, expect an ambulance to turn up in between 12 and 15 minutes, depending. For every minute after that first 180 seconds of not getting the pads of a defib on the patient, you've got 10% less chance of surviving. So if you run the maths out to 12, 13, 14, 15 minutes, which is the average call-out time, then the chances of restarting the heart's about 6%. So, it's black and white. So, there's a few things in this one that is interesting, and that it's no reflection on other diseases and other issues out there. But today in Australia, nearly 100 people die from an electrical issue of the heart today. That's more than anything else in Australia that kills people. It's more than cancer. It's more than car accidents. It's more than COVID. It's more than fires. And we've got a solution, and it costs between $2,000 to $2,500. And these units are portable. You don't need to plug them into the wall. They tell you what to do, all that good stuff. You don't have to be an expert to use it. So we sit here today in Australia with something that you've got a 6% survival rate if you haven't got a defib with you. It's the biggest killer in this country, and we've got a solution that costs a couple of grand. So to me, the next point to raise is, well, then why hasn't the government made it mandatory in schools if a kid today under the age of 10 is dying? Why isn't it mandatory in gyms where when you raise your heart rate, if you've got something wrong with your heart, you've got a better chance of having something go wrong? They don't have them there yet. And, you start talking about something that's not common sense. There's a fire extinguisher in every building in Australia. You have to have it. And mate, they should be there. It's important. But in a whole year, we lose about 100 Australians to a fire-related incident in a year. Today, we lose that same number from a cardiac arrest, but defibs aren't mandatory. So go figure.
Yeah, and we're talking out of hospital cardiac arrest here as well, which again, if you look at it, the size and the technology point of view, if this was something that predominantly happened in hospitals, then the market wouldn't be chasing the need for a lunchbox-sized defibrillator. They'd be big machines that would be sitting inside the hospital facilities. But this whole technology has been devised to be able to be portable and in the community, which is where we know it needs to be.
And Scott, you got to remember that people think, oh, well, the ones on the street, that I could have at home or in the office or it should be at my kid's school. Oh, they're probably not as good as the ones in the hospital. These units that are small, weigh a kilogram. Mate, when you put the pads on the patient, it coaches you. The units coach you how to do CPR. The defib will say to you, push deeper, push quicker. Good. We've got units that you can set them for Chinese or you can set them for other languages so people understand the commands of what's going on. We've got units that, in childcare centres and schools where you press a button if you've got a child that needs help as opposed to an adult to change the voltage that comes out of the unit. So, mate, these things are very sophisticated and highly technological units that are super simple to use, but are just fantastic. And for when you start talking about a couple of grand, they used to be, 6-7 years ago, they were $5,000 up to $10,000. Now they've come down to a couple of grand. It's like, for an 8-year warranty, you're talking about for less than a coffee a day, you've got something with you that's going to save a life potentially.
Yeah, from that perspective. No, look, that's really good. And as I said, I guess from my perspective, you're probably talking to the converted, but this is more around people and our listening audience is predominantly pharmacy. So on that note, let's introduce or talk about the fact that you and I have been working pretty hard with a couple of really good people in the Pharmacy Guild for the last 12 months. And we've just launched recently, or we had the opportunity to go to Canberra and meet with Susan Greenwood, Tiffany King and Cole Maguire. So talk to, I guess, the people listening today what that was all about.
Look, you introduced me to the fact that, well, let's go back a step. So after Chucky died and I learned about defibs and got involved with trying to distribute them to my community to make it safer. I then, and there was media information that came through and all this sort of thing. We got to a stage where I came up with some goals and missions that I wanted to initiate to make Australia a safer place. And my goal was to get a defib within 180 seconds, which is that sweet spot, to any Aussie that suffers a sudden cardiac arrest in Australia. Now, I said that when I thought, mate, that's a lofty goal, but we've got to go with something. And the media are asking me, what I wanted and what I thought could happen, and that was the goal. So when I met you and you let me know of the amount of pharmacies are out there in Australia, the fact that they were trusted by the community, it's a wellness hub that people go to, it made all the sense in the world that these places should have a defib and should be trained up to use it so that they could protect the community and the community know that there's a defib there. So all of a sudden then I'm thinking, well, maybe this goal that I've got is a bit closer than what I thought it was. And that was 18 months ago. So, things don't move that quick, but it's moved probably reasonably quick in this instance. And so the guild was the way that you said we needed to go to get things done. And to the guild's credit, they've been open to the fact that of what we've been talking about. They understand the need for defibs out there. They understand that they should be in these venues, and they've endorsed the online training program that we've got. And things are looking really positive. So I'm really happy with that. I think that it's common sense what we're doing, and the fact that we've got the support of the guild just helps us move this thing forward a lot quicker than what we could.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I guess that's the nice lead into where we're at with that now. Then, and that is that several of the big pharmacy groups and brands have come on board through our discussions. And if you're a pharmacist listening today and you haven't already, I guess, put a defib into your pharmacy or at least contemplating it, by all means, you can contact Guy or myself through our LinkedIn pages, through our websites. But you can also have a talk to your pharmacy group if you're part of a group, because several of the major groups have actually negotiated fairly hard with us to get some big group buys. So there's some deals out there from that perspective as well. And again, commendation to those pharmacy groups. And I might put a link to a few of those on our show notes page as well. But I guess the wrap up there is that the target and aim that we're looking for in terms of life saving and reducing the amount of Aussie deaths in the Australian communities through the Australian pharmacy industry and through the connection with the Pharmacy Guild of Australia is that we see this as a fairly vital link. And also, I guess, coming back to the technology that's involved here is that these are a machine that's available in the local community. Everyone's hearing enough about them these days. And I guess today's the opportunity for more and more people to create more awareness. Pharmacies as a health and a local community hub to actually create more awareness and talk to people about it. And I guess, become more in tune with this opportunity. Guy, I think it's also a good opportunity just to chat about the fact that we're heading to the APP conference on the Gold Coast at the end of May in conjunction with the Pharmacy Guild and also with the Pharmacy Platform team. So it's a great opportunity at the moment to say a bit of a thanks to Andrew Pattinson, Michael Flannery, Nicole Hooley and the team at what was Instigo, now Pharmacy Platform. There and their new group have been very supportive as well as a couple of other major groups around the place. But we'll be there at APP this year. Happy to chat with anyone, happy to catch up with anyone, but we're also happy to chat and easily contactable through our LinkedIn pages. Before we wrap up, is there anything else from your perspective that our listeners should know about?
Yeah, I think that, the reality of defibs going into venues that are highly populated, you don't realise just how often people have issues with hearts out there in the community. And an example of that is I was involved in the rollout for defibs in all the Woolworths stores in Australia. And, like 1,000 odd doorways that, sprinkle around the country, which is a lot less doorways than the pharmacy network. And we got the defibs into all the venues, and the first life saved from one of those defibs that were on the wall in the Woolworths store was the third day into them being out there. So someone dropped in the store, not breathing, unconscious, heart issue, and the defib was brought out and was put on the patient, and the staff got them back through our online training that we gave them, and the person lived because of it. So I look at this and I think that to go and achieve what Seattle's done, which is a 70% survival rate outside of hospitals in their area, and to get that same number here means that today 70 people that out of the 100 that are going to die won't die based on the Seattle numbers. And the only way to do that is for pharmacies, every pharmacy in Australia, to have a defib and be trained up to use it and promote that out to the community so that they know that there's one there. So, it's a big goal to do it, and it's something that will take some time, but everyone listening would go, well, that makes sense. And no one's ever said to you and I, Scott, that, mate, that doesn't seem right. Why would you do that? It's always like, yeah, well, that makes sense. So I'm really confident, but also I want time to go quicker so that we can get them out there so that people, certain people aren't dying based on the fact that we don't have defibs out there in the community. Yeah.
That's great. Guy, thanks very much for your time today. It's been great to chat with you, and look forward to catching up with any of our listeners that might be at APP towards the end of May.
Good on you, Scotty.
Thanks for your time. Thank you for listening today. Pharmacy View is a technology-focused podcast provided by Melbourne-based business Arian Technologies and Shopfront Solutions. Over the podcast series, our guests include pharmacists, retail managers, wholesalers, suppliers, and industry technology partners. If you would like further information on our podcast series or to participate in one of our episodes, feel free to send me a message or touch base through the Pharmacy View website, pharmacyview.com.au.